Elias Crane was not a man you would find behind bars. He was a man of vision, a man whose mind was always at work, solving problems and creating solutions that others could only dream of. A celebrated engineer, his mind was a labyrinth of blueprints and equations, always churning, always creating. His work was his passion, and his passion was his life. He had a gift for seeing the world not as it was, but as it could be. He had designed bridges that defied gravity and machines that seemed to possess a life of their own. His creations were marvels of modern engineering, admired by many and envied by some. Yet, here he was, stripped of his freedom, his world reduced to the cold, unforgiving walls of Blackstone Penitentiary. The stark contrast between his former life and his current reality was a bitter pill to swallow. Falsely accused of corporate espionage, a crime he could easily disprove if given the chance, Elias found himself at the mercy of a justice system that had failed him. The evidence against him was fabricated, the witnesses coached, and the trial a mere formality. Elias found himself trapped in a web of deceit. The more he struggled to free himself, the tighter the web became. It was a carefully orchestrated plot designed to ensure his downfall. Powerful men, threatened by his innovations, had conspired to silence him, manipulating evidence and witnesses to paint him as a criminal. They saw him as a threat to their own interests, a man who could disrupt their carefully constructed empires. The weight of their influence ensured a swift trial and a guilty verdict, burying Elias alive in a system designed to crush the human spirit. The gavel's strike was not just a sound, it was the echo of his dreams shattering. His cell, a cramped concrete box, became his new laboratory. Deprived of his tools and drawings, he clung to the one thing they couldn't take from him, his mind. In the silence of his cell, he found a new kind of focus. He began to see his imprisonment not as an end, but as a new beginning, a challenge to be overcome. Here, within the confines of his thoughts, he began to plot his escape, his keen intellect transforming into a weapon against his captors. He knew that his mind was his greatest asset, and he intended to use it to its fullest potential. Elias knew that the only way to clear his name was to reclaim his freedom, and he would have to outsmart the very system that held him captive to do it. He began to devise a plan that would require every ounce of his ingenuity and determination. The injustice of his situation fueled his determination. He would not be broken. He was determined to prove his innocence and expose the corruption that had ensnared him. He knew that his fight was not just for his own freedom, but for the truth itself. The fire of his spirit, the fire of his intellect, the fire of his determination. He was a man on a mission to reclaim his life and his name. Elias Crane, the genius robbed of his life, vowed to use his intellect to break free from the shackles of Blackstone and expose the truth that had been buried beneath layers of corruption and deceit. His journey was just beginning, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Blackstone Penitentiary was a monument to confinement, a fortress of brick and steel designed to crush the spirit of even the most hardened criminals. Its walls were not just physical barriers, but psychological ones, meant to break down the will of those trapped within. Towering walls, topped with razor wire, cast long, menacing shadows across the prison yard, creating an atmosphere of perpetual dread and hopelessness, a constant reminder of the world that lay beyond their reach. The yard, though open to the sky, felt like a cage, a cruel tease of freedom that was always out of grasp. The guards, hardened by years of dealing with society's outcasts, patrolled the corridors with an air of authority that brooked no dissent. Their presence was a constant oppressive force, a reminder of the power dynamics at play. The prison was a microcosm of control, every aspect of life meticulously regimented. From the moment the inmates woke up to the time they went to sleep, every second was accounted for, every action monitored. From the clanging bells that dictated their every move to the bland, tasteless food that sustained them, the environment was designed to strip away any sense of autonomy or pleasure. Every detail was calculated to strip them of their individuality, to remind them that they were nothing more than numbers in a system designed to punish and forget. The uniforms they wore, the numbers they were assigned, all served to erase their identities. The rows of identical cells, the monotonous routines, all contributed to a sense of dehumanization. Yet, within this oppressive environment, Elias refused to be just another inmate. He was determined to maintain his sense of self, to find a way to rise above the crushing weight of the prison's design. He understood that Blackstone, like any other structure, was merely a collection of systems, each with its own vulnerabilities. To him, the prison was not just a place of confinement, but a complex puzzle waiting to be solved. He began to study the prison's routines, his keen mind memorizing the guards' schedules, the shift changes, the moments of predictable laxity that often accompanied monotonous routines. He noted the patterns, the rhythms of the prison's daily life. He observed the way the shadows fell across the courtyard at different times of day, using the changing light to map out the areas that were less visible to the guards. Calculated the blind spots in the security camera's fields of vision, identifying the places where he could move unseen, and committed to memory the layout of the ventilation ducts that snaked through the prison's walls. These ducts, often overlooked, could provide a hidden pathway through the fortress. Blackstone might have been designed to confine, but Elias saw it for what it truly was, a puzzle, an intricate challenge that his brilliant mind was determined to solve. He knew that every system had a flaw, and he was determined to find it. In the end, it was not just about escaping the physical walls, but about breaking free from the mental chains that sought to bind him. Time, usually a precious commodity, stretched out before Elias like an endless expanse within the confines of Blackstone. The days bled into each other, a monotonous cycle that seemed to have no end. Each morning he awoke to the same harsh clang of the cell doors, the same dreary breakfast, and the same faces of fellow inmates, each etched with their own stories of despair and survival. Deprived of his freedom, he learned to savor the smallest details, finding solace in the rhythms of prison life. The way the light filtered through the barred windows at different times of the day, casting long shadows that danced on the cold concrete floors. The scent of the morning air, tinged with the faintest hint of dew, a reminder of the world outside that he could no longer touch. He watched the guards, their faces etched with boredom and cynicism, as they made their rounds, their movements predictable, almost robotic. Each guard had their own routine, their own way of walking, talking, and even the way they held their keys. Elias observed them all, cataloging their behaviors, their quirks, and their habits. He paid attention to the sounds, the clanging metal doors, the distant shouts of inmates, the hum of the fluorescent lights that flickered incessantly overhead. The prison was a symphony of noises, each one telling a story, each one a piece of the larger puzzle that was Blackstone. The rhythmic clanging of the doors became a metronome, marking the passage of time in a place where time seemed to stand still. He learned to differentiate between the footsteps of the different guards, their gaits as unique as fingerprints. Some walked with a heavy, deliberate step, while others moved with a light, almost hurried pace. Each step, each sound was a clue, a piece of information that Elias stored away in his mind. Old Man Henderson, his limp a constant reminder of a past injury, shuffled through the cell block every Tuesday and Thursday, his keys jingling a discordant melody. Henderson's presence was a constant, a fixture in the ever-changing landscape of prison life. His limp was a story in itself, a tale of a life lived within the confines of Blackstone. Warden Thompson, a man who exuded an air of ruthless efficiency, always made his rounds at precisely 8 p.m., his polished shoes clicking against the concrete floor like a metronome marking time. Thompson was a man of order, of discipline, and his presence was a reminder of the rigid structure that governed life within Blackstone. Elias noted these details, his mind working tirelessly to piece together the puzzle of Blackstone's security apparatus. He observed the guards' routines, the shifts in their behavior, the subtle changes in their demeanor. Each observation was a piece of the larger puzzle, a step closer to understanding the intricate web of security that held him captive. He befriended a prison librarian, a kind-hearted old man named Samuel who had been wrongly convicted decades ago. Samuel was a man of wisdom, of knowledge, and his presence was a beacon of hope in the otherwise bleak landscape of Blackstone. Through their conversations, Elias found a sense of camaraderie, a connection to the world beyond the prison walls. Samuel, starved for intellectual stimulation, welcomed Elias's thirst for knowledge, providing him with books on history, philosophy, and even engineering. These books were more than just a means of passing time. They were a lifeline, A connection to the world outside, a source of inspiration and hope. Elias devoured them all, his mind constantly searching for information, for any scrap of knowledge that could aid him in his quest for freedom. Each book was a treasure trove of information, each page a step closer to understanding the world beyond Blackstone. In the quiet moments of the night when the prison was still, Elias would lose himself in the pages, his mind racing with possibilities, with plans, with dreams of freedom. The objects that surrounded Elias, seemingly mundane and insignificant, took on a new meaning as he began to envision his escape. A toothbrush, sharpened against the rough concrete floor, became a makeshift lockpick. Bed sheets, torn into strips and knotted together, transformed into a makeshift rope. He befriended a burly inmate named Big Ed, a man whose intimidating physique belied a surprising talent for woodworking. Big Ed, sensing the intelligence that flickered behind Elias's quiet demeanor, agreed to help, carving pieces of wood into the specific shapes and sizes, their true purpose known only to them. Elias salvaged scraps of metal from the workshop, his fingers working instinctively, transforming them into crude but effective tools. A metal file smuggled out from the machine shop became a chisel. A spoon, painstakingly bent and reshaped, served as a crude wrench. Each object, carefully hidden away, represented a small victory in his fight against the suffocating grip of Blackstone. He worked patiently, meticulously, his movements precise, his mind focused on the task at hand. To the casual observer, he was just another inmate whiling away the hours, but Elias knew that he was slowly but surely assembling the tools that would set him free.